For months now, basically the moment after we learned about the whistleblower's complaint on the president's dealings with Ukraine, the right-wing media has been obsessed with the identity of the whistleblower. Many right-wing outlets have published the name of a person they claim is a whistleblower. We don't know if it is. And they're not alone. Don Jr. has outed this individual, Senator Rand Paul, Congressman Louis Gohmert, all of them have done it. And so perhaps it was only a matter of time before the president did it himself. He did it over the weekend in his favorite venue for this sort of thing, his Twitter feed. The thing is, those tweets have real-world effects. As Washington Post notes, quote, when threats against the whistleblower spike, often seemingly spurred by presidential tweets, he is driven to and from work by armed security officers. That's a U.S. government official who needs a security detail because the president is directing venom at him. And this all comes amidst a very, very noticeable uptick in the president's Twitter activity, which has always been dark and weird and angry and insulting. In fact, the New York Times analyzed more than 11,000 tweets from the president going all the way back to his first day in office. Unsurprisingly, the Times found that more than half of all his tweets were attacks on someone or something. So no other category even comes close. And then there's the president's activity of retweeting accounts, some that are brand new with zero followers, pushing forward weird conspiracy theories from the darkest corners of the internet. Behavior that raises serious questions. For instance, how does he even find these accounts to retweet them? Joining me now is NBC News reporter Ben Collins, who spends much of his time chasing down bots and conspiracy networks. Ben, let's start on that first question. Sometimes the president will retweet an account, and it has very few followers. Sometimes it's following zero people. In one case recently, in this recent jag, he retweeted the first tweet of an account. And I thought to myself, how did he get there to find out this person was tweeting and retweet their first account? How does that work?
Yeah, so in this case, he got there from Seb Gorka, but Seb Gorka retweeted this account that was created the day before, had tweeted once, and he tweeted about he said that he was Joseph from Borough Park, a Hasidic neighborhood in Brooklyn, and he said that he is no longer a fan of Jerry Nadler after 30 years of being a fan of Jerry Nadler. Twitter took this account down in like a day because they did some basic forensics. They tried to send it an email, and the email didn't work. So these are really easy things to track down. But he's been on one recently. I think that's probably the best way to put it. And when he retweets these very shady accounts. And the accounts all have very specific hyper-targeted messages, just like Joseph from Borough Park. And they are almost always impossible to verify.
Yeah, we should say the Joseph from Borough Park, the idea was that this was a Jewish constituent of Jerry Nadler, who had sort of turned against Jerry Nadler. The profile picture was actually from a New York Times story about Jewish Trump supporters.
There wasn't a lot of work put into this one.
Yeah, sure it was. But it's also, I guess, part of the question I always think is like where, so in that case you had said Gorka, but there's also the question of like, where does the president get this stuff? I mean, Dan Scavino is his social media sort of manager. How is it getting into his brain that these people are out there saying these things?
Sure. I think what we really have to do is come to the reality that we are all in now, which is that there are two different realities for news now. And he has ventured into the one that appeases him the most. And there is an entire ecosystem that exists to push narratives that absolve him of every crime, absolve him of every wrongdoing that has ever existed. And there is an ecosystem that exists to help those writers, push buttons, own the libs, basically, is unfortunately what it is. That's what it's about. And, for example, a really good example of this is Facebook banned the name of the guy that people believe is the whistleblower. They banned it from posts from showing up. The posts are hidden. But what they didn't do is they didn't take it out of titles of news articles. So, conservative news outlets would push these stories and be like, you won't believe who the whistleblower is. And then they leave the title in this, with the guy's name in it on Facebook. And those would go wildly viral. And there is an incentive structure for this sort of thing now that, it feeds into the president, and the president only sees this stuff. He searches specific names, specific concepts, and he is fed algorithmically stuff that he agrees with, so he retweets it.
It's such a great point that, like, no amount of standards, like we are not reporting that name, and no amount of standards can stop the most powerful person in the world with the biggest platform from elevating something. I mean, that's really what's going on here, right? Like, news organizations and Facebook and everyone say, like, we're not going to report this, and the president can just retweet someone or say, use his platform to do it, and there's no containing him in some ways.
Yeah, and this is something we're going to have to deal with for the remainder of our lives. Or, he has a separate fire hose that connects to people that is, in a lot of ways, larger than a lot of mainstream media, a lot of even alternative media. He's created a secondary ecosystem for himself that absolves him of everything. In these spaces, there was just a graphic up there that showed, this pipeline from 4chan all the way to Facebook. In these spaces where he's like a god emperor, that's what they call him on 4chan and, in this Reddit forum called the Donald. It's the largest Donald Trump community on the internet. He cannot do wrong.
Right.
And while not every living person is on 4chan and Reddit, some of this stuff makes it downwind. And it makes it downwind through, through InfoWars, through Gateway Pundit, things like that. And when it happens, it gets to the president, and then it gets to regular people. So something that can very easily start on 4chan, even though, these people, normal people would never be on 4chan, it can still get to regular people just through this, just through this downwind effect.
And he is the key link in the chain, which is what's so fascinating about that. Ben Collins, thank you so much.